Okay, so hey everyone, thanks for being with us today. Tom, especially you on your Sunday morning, afternoon, not sure. We want to thank you for being with us and for taking this time to chat with us. We've just got a group of people who are either in Quebec, have been in Quebec at one point in their lives. We're all just Quebec practitioners at heart. And we wanted to have a discussion with you on, your baby, which is ACT, and maybe you could just start off by giving us a little bit of an overview as to how ACT differs from the traditional clinical ABA models that we're used to.
Well, it's interesting that you call it ACT because we routinely use acronyms like FCT, DBT, ABA, USA. But actually, the particular words and the sequencing of the words that make up that acronym were chosen specifically so that you would say it as a word. It said ACT. And the reason it's said ACT is because the function of this technology for improving psychological flexibility is aimed at getting you into action, is aimed at helping people to do the things that are going to yield the most positive reinforcers for them, even if it's difficult to do those things. That may mean staying the course when staying the course is really challenging. When you're, for example, asking a parent to withhold the candy in the supermarket until the kids get outside and back into the car with their seatbelts buckled, those kids are going to be screaming. And all the other patrons in the supermarket are going to be looking at you like you're a bad parent. You're going to have that little monkey inside of your head saying, bad parent, bad parent, bad parent. It's hard to stay the course. And likewise, it's hard to change course sometimes when to do so would yield the maximum positive reinforcers. If you've been drinking excessively, it's time to slow it down or quit. That's hard to do, especially if you've built up some chemical dependence, and yet doing so is what is likely to build the largest pool of positive reinforcers for the rest of your life. That's what ACT is about, and that's why we call it ACT rather than ACT, because it is not just about taking action, but because it comes from a science of behavior. A science of behavior that is ultimately about changing what people do in the real world so that not only so that individuals who are behaving contact positive reinforcement, but so that we save the planet, so that we save our culture, so that we survive. That's what ACT is about. That's what behavior analysis is about. So the direct answer to your question is they come from the same pot. They're just ladled out into slightly different bowls. We ladle out ABA into this bowl, and we have traditionally labeled out ACT into that bowl, and that bowl is talk therapy. This bowl is not talk therapy, but they're about the same thing. They're about taking effective action, to use Skinner's phrase. Now, is it different? Well, it's an extension. To make use of ACT is an extension of mainstream applied behavior analysis. And I want to take you back to 1968 for a second. Imagine that you're Todd Risley, Don Baer, and Matt Wolf, and you've seen a number of articles in the Journal of Experimental Analysis of Behavior. You've read Skinner's book, Science and Human Behavior. You have every reason to believe that at some point down the line, we'll be able to scale this technology up to be able to deal with complex human problems. But there's two things in the way. One is that there are political realities. The American Psychological Association is watching very closely and has never been particularly kind to behavior Analysis and is quite ready to stomp down. And they've got big, powerful attorneys. And so if there was going to be a right to practice for applied behavior analysts, it would need to be constrained by a number of procedures. Number two, and I think this is really important, the science of behavior really hadn't progressed that far. We've just gotten to the point that we were able to clearly demonstrate in laboratory settings that you could make use of particular technologies to change particular behaviors. What Don Baer wrote, and I just happened to have it in front of me because I knew you were going to ask me this question. He wrote in 1968, he said, "We're not empowered to solve these bigger problems. We have not yet made an analysis of how to empower ourselves to try them. We've not yet made the system analytic task analyses that prove crucial to solving those problems, and we do empower ourselves sufficiently to try them." Baer was talking about big human problems: poverty, malnutrition, pollution, nuclear annihilation. But he might just as well have been talking about how we deal with issues related to anxiety and depression, how we deal with behaviors associated with feeling like I'm no good. What Skinner tried to do in Science of Human Behavior is say, this is where we're at with the empirical science of behavior. Here are the next steps. Here's how you could conceptualize anxiety, anticipation, depression, the work of a psychotherapist, the way people interact in small groups, the way societies evolve, the way societies kill themselves off. Here's what we need to develop in science so that you can do what I have laid the groundwork for, saving the planet. This is why when you go to ABAI, you see those t-shirts that Dick Malott sells, Save the World with Behavior Analysis, because this was really the goal all along. So Skinner laid the groundwork down and said, what is anxiety? It's respondent behavior that occurs when a particular operant has been followed sometimes with reinforcement, other times with punishment, other times with no consequence at all. It's unclear between the emission of the response and whatever consequence it generates, what that consequence will be. That's when you engage in sweating and trembling and whatever other respondent behaviors you engage in that you summarize with the term, that's anxiety. What Skinner was saying is we need to develop a operant technology that helps people to feel effectively and take action in their lives, even when they're experiencing anxiety. So how is it different? Well, here's how it's different. 1968, the guidelines were set. Applied behavior analysis deals with socially significant behavior that's observable and measurable. We try and do our best to develop analytic procedures to make sure that it is our interventions that produce the results that we got. Applied behavior analysis involves technologies that we can write down and so that anybody else could get the same results. We relate whatever we've done back to basic principles of behavior. That means discriminative stimuli, reinforcers, punishers, extinguishing situations. And it generalizes. We see these results move on to different behaviors, to different environments, to different people, and they're durable. And they're strong enough that anybody looking at it and says, we'll have to say, wow, what we did with Miguel really improved Miguel's performance. that's the gauntlet that was laid in 1968. And so that's what's upon us always in applied behavior analysis. Up until very recently, I wasn't the very first person. DJ Moran is a BCBA who was, he's also a clinical psychologist, so it's easy to dismiss what he was doing, but he works as a consultant with oil companies. So he was doing safety consulting and using acceptance and commitment training. And but I was kind of maybe the very first pure BCBA who was like going to ABAI and QCABA and other places and saying, you can use this inside of your scope of practice in order to help people who are stuck and whose behavior doesn't readily come under the control of the direct contingency management strategies that you've been using to get unstuck and bring their behavior back under the control of direct acting contingencies. To bring this full circle is that we now have some studies, that probably about 12, 13 studies, that are the beginning of a program of research that makes use of ABA designs and analytic procedures that give the opening stages of, I don't know if permission is the right word, but legitimacy to applied behavior analysts making use of this technology as a supplement in order to help people bring their behavior under the control of direct contingencies. Let me just finish this up by saying this. Applied behavior analysis has traditionally looked at direct contingency management strategies for improving performance. Sometimes you're working with people whose behavior doesn't readily come under direct contingency control. Maybe it's because you don't have access to the reinforcers of the person who you're working. Maybe it's because they have a very, very long history that is difficult for you to manage. Or maybe it's because they are talking to themselves privately and that behavior is interfering with their ability to do the things that are going to contact reinforcement. It's these situations for which the use of acceptance and commitment training can bump performance forward, get it moving, get behavioral momentum going so that your direct contingency management strategies will work.
Perfect. Thanks, Tom. That was a very comprehensive answer, actually.
Sorry for the length of it.
No, not at all. It's great. That's what we were looking for.